wondering if people were going to start singing that. That was a little jarring, wasn't it? It was a beautiful prayer, but good. I like the juxtaposition of this poem that so beautifully talks about these human truths of the loveliness that we seek when we want communion with our beloved. And that sometimes how that desire for that communion can go astray. And, you know, I like to think that I'm immune to being addicted to love, but I might as well face it. There are times when that communion becomes the sole focus of my life. And I can shut out all other sources of joy. The poet says, in the belly of it, we climb down into the belly of it, aching for this communion that we are being refused. We seek this one source of joy, and no joy outside of it will we admit. There are so many love songs. I know it was Valentine's Day. I hope you stay with me in how we think about love and community this morning. Because we are inundated with love songs that sing these horrible things and give us all these really dysfunctional messages about what love actually is. And it's overdone, and it probably makes a lot of us sick. And yet, the songs still exist, right? For a reason. Yes, unfortunately. If you've been in a relationship for any length of time, you know the bliss of that communion. When one recognizes another and you are deeply held and understood and cared for exactly as you are. There's a certain high to it, the chemicals that flood our beings that make, this idea of us being addicted to love not so crazy. My relationship with my husband strengthens me to be more of myself in the world. I've never been able to spend so much time with another human being and still want more. And at times, my connection can become more clinging than casual. I'm all too familiar with the feeling of suffering that happens when I do this. Yeah, I know, it's like I have all these ice cream flavors, but I just want that one. I just want that one. Maybe that one's busy right now. How do I make myself open to all of the gifts and not just focusing on this one? I'd like to think I'm immune to doing that I've learned this lesson enough times in my life, but it turns out I keep learning that lesson over and over and over again. Oh, how I wish that just the mere knowing of something would make behavior change easier. I had a friend who used to say he was going to get a tattoo on his wrist of a watch, and so that when people would ask him, what time is it? He could say, now. And my response was, if I had that watch, it would say, how about now? Because that's often how I can turn to, it's so much easier for me to turn to the people I know and love and want their support or their attention or their care, rather than risking building a new friendship or calling that acquaintance that I barely know. Instead, I will sit there with the people I love and say, how about now? Are you ready now? How about now? Are you ready? Is it time yet? Can I get what I want now? How about now? And wanting their love is not a problem, but refusing to accept when people aren't available or are overloaded themselves and then deciding no one else will do, that's when love becomes a problem. Because there's not just one channel of love that flows. It doesn't mean we're in a desert if that door is shut. Having one person we know in life is not enough. And sometimes that becomes this ache that we know in marriage, but also it can be an ache we know in life. I've had several people in the last couple weeks in our church telling me, and also a colleague while Mark and I were away at Center Institute, talking about those moments that I shared in the meditation when it seems like everyone you know is like having a hard time and they're all bogged down at the same moment. And so it throws you off, and how could it not? Those are your support systems, and they're all off balance, so you find yourself off balance too. I am fond of calling this phenomenon the worst. When my husband is upset and I'm upset and I come home and we just ping pong back and forth off of each other and we can even know it, but sometimes it's just hard to stop and be willing to Go talk to someone else right now. Now, I'm not proud of this, but this does happen in my own life. There are times that I really just want the people in my life to be more like pets than human beings. Sometimes I just want to come home and I want to open that door and be like, hey there, cute, old, calm chocolate lab who wags and jumps and says, oh, everything in my life is great now that you're home. My needs are simple. Could I have some dry food in a bowl, maybe a little walk, and then I'll just cuddle up on the couch and I'll be quiet and cute. But sometimes I come home and I'm like, oh, ready to put everything down, and instead, the people there in my life think that I'm the dog. And they're waiting for me to start wagging and telling them how wonderful and great they are. As if, the nerve. When we're all having a hard time at the same time, sometimes I just want to call dibs on love. Like, it's my turn now. There are times when I just don't want to be open to the life that is in front of me. And I don't want to come home expecting to love. I want to expect to be loved. And I don't want to be prepared to serve. I am perfectly fine with you serving me. Have you ever thought about changing the closing words in that way? Probably not, and for good reason. Because waiting for someone else to be the conduit of love, to do all of those things to make our lives okay, is not the most engaged or mature spiritual path. It's good to encourage ourselves to stay open to life, to expect to love and be prepared to serve. Because it's easy to close ourselves down, and if we do, we will suffer. Even when we're overloaded, we will add more burden to our lives if we close down. I know this. I thought about having this dialogue between the preacher Erin and the human Erin, but I am all one and the same, so alas, here I am. I wish that knowing that being open to life is what really serves me best meant I did it more often. But there are times when I just want relationships to be easy. I want to go to the person I know, whether it's my husband or my good friend, and I just want to say, you're a faucet, and I'm turning you on now to give me what I want, and it's going to be the right flow and the right temperature, and when I'm done, I just shut it off and I get to walk away. I want to go, you know what I'm talking about. I want to go, I'm so glad I'm not alone. I want to go to the fridge and just open the door and take what I want and then shut it, and I don't have to stock it or anything. When I'm stressed, I have a hard time accepting that no one particular person in my life is designated Erin's faucet or Erin's chocolate lab or Erin's refrigerator. I have a hard time remembering that there are lots of other people who look to me to be their faucet, their dog, or their refrigerator. And I have a hard time remembering that we're surrounded by faucets and fridges and labs. I may not have an in-depth relationship with them yet, but we walk amongst them. I was amazed at Center Institute when I would sit. It was a collegial gathering of over 450 ministers, and I would sit at a table of all new people, and I was always drawn into the conversation. How many amazing and thoughtful people surround us. It's overwhelming, actually, to try to imagine the stories of all of the people, but they're there. There is more love somewhere. But I forget that, and I forget that I am also that. And I forget that this nourishment, when I give it away, actually I get to experience it again. Why do I always have to go looking for someone else to be for me what I may just be called to be myself? Because when I really need love, if I stop chasing after it and I just decide to give it away, then I get to experience it again. Because whatever I say and do is what makes up my life. And so if we choose love, that's what we will experience. Sometimes, and I'm so glad we say the closing words every week, because sometimes I hear it and it helps me go home and be a better wife. Because it occurred to me at some point listening to the words, open to life, expecting to love, and prepared to serve, that those are great words of relationship advice. That when I say relationship, really I mean any kind of friendship or family relationship or romantic partnership. Because our closing words invite us to think of ourselves as active shapers of our lives and our world, not just passive recipients. That I can go from this place open to the life and the lives of the people who are around me. What does it really look like to come home and see that person for who they are, not what I'm wanting them to be? And can I come in the door or sit down to lunch or go out with some new friend that I'm trying to build a relationship with and allow myself to actually expect to love? Not to be disappointed, but that I might feel love and be loving. And there are times when in relationships I am called to be prepared to serve. And so thinking of these words before I walk into those times when the people in my lives are struggling helps me be present and a better friend for them. Now this message would not have made sense to married couples 100 years ago. This addicted to love song that we heard. It may not have even made sense 50 years ago. It seems to be a recent cultural shift that we put so much pressure on our primary relationships or romantic partnerships. Barbara Erin Gingrich once wrote that people used to find companionship among their high school buddies, and they would seek childcare from granddads and aunts. Marriages lasted because we expected less of them. If you wanted a bridge partner or a plumber or a confidant, you had a whole village to choose from. But today, we don't marry one person, i.e. a limited and flawed human being. We attempt to marry a village in one person. And when we rely more and more on this one person, it means we rely less and less on everything and everyone else. There's a sociological study that was done in the 80s and again in the 2000s about asking Americans, how many people do you feel comfortable sharing your troubles with? And in 1985, the average number of people said that they felt comfortable sharing with between 1 and 3 people. In 2005, the scientists repeated the study, and they found that the results were shocking. And so they decided to redo and see if they made any mistakes in their methodology before they released the results. And when they did, they found that it was even worse than the numbers they got the first time they computed their information, or computed, whatever word you want to use. But it turns out that the results were worse than they had feared. In 2005, 25% of Americans felt comfortable sharing their troubles with no one, 0. Another 25%, they felt comfortable sharing their troubles with one person, most likely their significant other. So despite all the emails and Facebook posts and conversations that we have online, we often are not talking about what really matters in our lives. That means that half the people in our country don't share their lives with anyone beyond who lives in their home. That means half of America is truly disconnected. The study concluded that if close relationships support people in the same way that beams hold up buildings, more and more Americans appear to be dependent on a single beam. Perhaps this speaks to the high divorce rate that we have. But on Valentine's weekend, I want to offer some reflection to think not just about those primary relationships that we treasure in our lives, but also what is our larger understanding of relationship and community in today's society. Because the poem and the song that we heard and this ache of marriage, it also points to the cultural fabric of our times. We are an isolated people. And if not us personally, then the people we live next to and who help shape our communities. We are an aching people before our marriages, during our marriages, and after our marriages. Because as long as we live isolated and disconnected in this way, we're going to suffer. You can't cut yourself off from life and expect to feel alive. That is the religious invitation of this poem and my reflection. This remembrance that the ache we may feel in our lives can actually shift when we climb out of our isolation and we open ourselves back up to life. This is my Valentine for you. This religious love note that I want you to take with you into your week. That no matter if all of the people in your life are suffering at the same time and every person you reach out to seems only to add more stress and more needs and fulfillment, there is more love somewhere. And no matter how lonely we feel, no matter how isolated we think we are, or the particulars of our suffering, how no one will understand, there's more joy somewhere. Do you believe in the overall goodness of people? Are you sure? Do you believe in the overall goodness of people? I said overall. Okay. Do you believe that life is worthwhile? Then there is more hope somewhere. We believe this. These are our theological truths. We believe in the overall goodness of people and of the worthiness of life. And so we call each other on to be open to this life, to remember that we can still expect to love even though we've been hurt over and over and over again. We may want love to be easy. We want that font that flows in our direction whenever we want it, and it can be if we stay open to all of the sources from which it flows. Maybe that's the cashier at Trader Joe's. If you're ever lonely, you will get a friendly conversation at Trader Joe's. I'm just saying, follow that bid. Mark talked about bids last week that come to us, and how do we respond to them? Well, life offers us bids all of the time if we are willing to receive them. Maybe it's that acquaintance who calls you to have lunch, but you're not really sure if you have anything in common. Go for it. Maybe it's saying yes to doing something that you're not really all that excited about. Just pick up a new book, watch a new movie, go do something, anything that lowers the voice in your head that says, that's not what I want. I want that flavor. And instead of listening to that voice that says, I don't want to, listen to the voice that says, go for it! Because we can let go without first knowing into what it is we're letting go. Because that's what faith is. Faith in the overall goodness of people and faith in the goodness of life. So this is my Valentine's card for you. On the front, there's Erin standing and looking at her watch saying, how about now? And inside, there is my friend who will now wear my face, and it says, now. Now is the time I will go for it, and I will act on my faith in the goodness of people and the goodness of life. So I challenge you, I invite you to pass this Valentine on and to pay it forward. If you sometime this next week find yourself saying yes, going for it, having faith in the goodness of people and life, and you try something new, or you show up to be someone's faucet, or whatever you do, take a picture or put a note, post it to our church Facebook page, so that the only way we minister to each other is not just in the saying of our closing words each week, but in the way that we live them and share those experiences with one another.